Sam Pinkard here. I wanted to make a quick video just talking a little bit about being an elopement photographer. If you follow us on social media, you know that we started doing elopements before the pandemic, before there was this huge wave of people who were becoming elopement photographers. And the industry is a little bit romanticized. Now, there are great things about being an elopement photographer. We love it. It's such a fun job. We have such awesome clients. Um, we don't take for granted all of the opportunities that this job has brought our way. But there are also downsides of being an elopement photographer versus being a wedding photographer or a family photographer or any other niche of photography. And I don't think those are talked about very much. I think because of how romanticized, because of the beautiful photos and the locations elopement photographers get to go to, a lot of people look at it as this dream job for photographers, which it is. It's awesome, but there are downsides. So I wanted to make a video talking about the pros and the cons of this awesome job that we love that also has its challenges. So to jump right in, number one, I'm going to start off with the pros. Just start off with the good things, and then we'll get to the cons that people don't talk about as much near the end. So starting with the pros, first of all, the breathtaking locations. The places that you get to photograph as an elopement photographer, it's incredible. You know, we all, as a photographer, we got into this for the art, for creating something. And being an elopement photographer gives you a little bit more control over where you are creating. You're not just stuck going to a venue where, the couple chose that venue because it was affordable and it worked logistically for their wedding. You get to help them choose what location they're going to. And so you have a little more control over making sure that the location for photos is somewhere that you'll be passionate about shooting. So breathtaking locations, we've been able to photograph on mountains like these ones, or going out west to national parks like these. So we wouldn't have had those same opportunities if we were just photographing weddings. We have had some incredible wedding venues that we've shot at, but not at the same frequency as the elopements, where almost every single one is a beautiful location. So that's the first pro. Second is it's smaller, it's more intimate than a wedding, which means you get closer with your couples. You have more time with them. You get to talk with them more, get to know them better. It's a little less stressful than a large wedding because you don't have a wedding day of coordinator who's nagging you like, hey, are you almost done with photos? We got to get over here. Or you're not working with a bride who's just overwhelmed from people asking her questions left and right and nagging her about what's going on. So it's less stressful. It's more intimate. You build relationships. I mean, we've got some clients that we have been friends with for years because we did their elopement. And you don't get that as much with weddings. You can, but it's not as common because they also have dozens of other people around who they're very close with. So you are just kind of a side piece of their big day, where with elopements, you kind of are the person making their big day happen. Third thing is the creative freedom. I already mentioned you get to help choose the location, but also you have a little bit more control over what you're doing for photos and how long you take with photos, and really investing time and energy into making the photos as good as you possibly can. With weddings, you sometimes only have 30 minutes for portraits, if that. When a timeline is running behind, a lot of the times it's photography that gets cut short because they don't want 150 guests waiting to be served their hors d'oeuvres, or waiting for the entrance into the reception. So a lot of the times it's the portraits that get cut short, and you don't have as much time, let alone control on where can you actually go for photos. If the venue is in a rural area, there might not be a lot of places, or you might not have enough time to get to the locations that you would love to shoot at. So you have a little bit more creative freedom when you're an elopement photographer versus being a wedding photographer, where you're limited to what the wedding actually allows. That's number three. Number four is the flexibility in scheduling. This is a big one. I don't think a lot of people actually talk about this. When you are trying to book weddings, it can be very challenging because, like for us in the Adirondack Mountains, the fall foliage, the leaf peepers, that's the big season for weddings. October, the really the end of September, beginning of October, during the foliage season, those Saturdays and Sundays, we get like no joke, dozens of inquiries for those weekends. If we were just doing wedding photography and we were getting so many inquiries for those same dates where you can't be in two places at once, you just got to turn away clients. That's the nature of the beast. With elopement photography, when we get inquiries for those that fall foliage season, we can spread them out. So we can say, oh, you want fall foliage? Well, we've got this date open. And then they book that date. With weddings, they're booking a venue first 90% of the time. And so you don't have that flexibility in scheduling where you can kind of fit more clients in. So it makes it a little bit easier to fill your calendar than if you're stuck with whatever wedding date they're bringing to you in their inquiry. So I think that's a big pro. Also, if you don't want to work on weekends, most of our elopements are on weekdays. So for people who want that work-life balance of doing photography during the week, having their weekends free, weddings don't work for that. Elopements, they can. A lot of our elopements are on weekends, but the majority are on weekdays. Fifth thing is the higher profit per client. Now, it depends on how you approach this. And some people think of elopements as being cheaper and clients don't want to spend as much money. That's not really the case. Because if you think about it, when somebody's booking a wedding, they have to book a venue, a hair and makeup artist, a florist, a caterer. They've got all of these expenses where their budget is spread thin across the board. With elopements, usually, not always the case, but usually photography is the one important thing to them. And so, if they're traveling, they might have to book like an Airbnb. They might, they're still going to need wedding clothes and rings and things like that. But a lot of our clients, probably at least half, don't even have a bouquet. So there's a lot fewer expenses for them so they can focus their budget on what matters more, which is photography. And lastly, more meaningful work. Elopements can feel a lot more meaningful as a photographer because you are more involved in the couple's day. You are more involved in making them have an experience versus just capturing whatever's happening on the wedding day. So it does feel a little bit more meaningful. It feels more, after an elopement, you feel like, wow, that was exciting to be a part of. After a wedding, from my experience, most of them feel pretty much the same. You do your getting ready photos, maybe do a first look, do portraits, do the ceremony, do the reception. It's just kind of going through the motions, and you don't really feel like you were a part of something different each time. Elopements, I can say from experience, from doing dozens and dozens and dozens of elopements, that each one feels very different because it's just you and the couple, maybe a couple other people there, but it's just you and the couple getting to know each other, having an incredible day celebrating their unique love in a way that is meaningful to them and authentic to them. So it feels more meaningful and more like you did something worthwhile versus a wedding where you're kind of going through the motions every time. So those are the pros. Being an elopement photographer is great. We love it. It's so much fun. You take beautiful photos. You get to work with awesome people. But there are some cons. There are some downsides that I don't think really get talked about enough. So to get into the cons of being an elopement photographer, first of all, depending on what type of elopements you do, it can be physically demanding. We are adventurous elopement photographers. So a lot of our clients are hiking up a mountain, and some of these hikes are 10 miles long. We've camped overnight on a trail before, especially when we want to do a sunrise mountaintop elopement where we're waking up at 2 a.m. to start hiking. We drive an hour and a half to a trail and start hiking at 3:30, and we're exhausted by the end of the day. If we leave our house at 2 a.m. and we get back at noon, we're sleeping the rest of the day. So it can be very exhausting. Unpredictable weather. Our couples rely on us to have backup plans for weather, but sometimes there's just no backup plan that really does justice to the vision that the couple had in the first place. So you really have to set expectations beforehand that weather can change. You can't expect something to be exactly the way that you want it because you're working in the elements. It's you just got to go with the flow. Whatever Mother Nature throws your way, you kind of have to deal with it and make the best of it. So unpredictable weather, seasonal work. Obviously, this is the case to some degree for bigger weddings as well. But for elopements, especially when you're outside, if you're in an area where the winters are harsh, or you have gross winters or gross mud season in the spring, you're not going to have nearly as many elopements. We did probably 85% of our elopements in the late summer, early fall. And so the rest of the year was very, very slow. Those months were great, very busy, very exhausting. But that's just the nature of the beast. Kind of depends on the location that you're in, but that can be seasonal work, can be a downside of doing elopements. Another one is high travel costs. Depending again on where you go, what you do, our elopements that we've done out west or overseas, the expenses add up very quick. If I told you the amount of revenue we brought in our business last year or the year before, you probably would, your jaw would probably drop. You'd probably be like, whoa, I need to do elopement photography. But at the same time, if I showed you the expenses for our business, your jaw would probably drop again, but for the opposite reason. So it is, travel costs can add up very quickly, and you don't even realize how fast they're adding up until at the end of the year, you're like, I spent what on travel? So that can be, if you're doing travel or destination elopements, that can be a significant factor that you have to consider and you have to budget for. So travel costs, less predictability. Now this is a big one. Booking clients and how predictable your booking process or how many you will book. I don't think a lot of people talk about this, but elopements are much harder to book than weddings or families or maternity because of a few reasons. First of all, referrals. You don't get nearly as many referrals when you do elopements versus when you do weddings. Why? How many people do you know that have eloped? How many people do you know that have had a traditional, 50, 100, 200 person wedding? You've probably known a lot more people who had the traditional wedding than people who eloped. So let's just say you wanted to elope. How many people could you ask for a referral for one versus the other? That's true for almost all couples out there. Almost every single couple is going to know a lot more people who had a wedding than people who eloped. A lot of couples that we've worked with, they have told us, we don't know anyone who's done this. We didn't even know this was an option until we found you. So there's a lot less opportunity to get referrals because those people just don't know. And chances are the people who are working with you don't know a lot of other people who want to elope, or sometimes they're just more secluded in general. They have a closer, tight-knit circle of friends, and that might be why they wanted to elope. So it's a lot less likely they're going to be, sharing your information with other people. So it is harder to get referrals. Two, and this is true for weddings as well, but even more so for elopements, building a book of business is not a thing. If you're a CPA or a plumber or any other service-based business, even other photography niches other than weddings, like a family photographer, a maternity photographer, things like that, you can build a book of business because you have repeat clients. They're coming back to you for more of the same type of session or similar sessions. If you're a maternity photographer, you could also do newborns. You could also do milestone sessions. You could also do family photos. Those are all kind of similar and kind of lumped in the same category. So it's easier to build a book of business where, 5 years down the road, 70% of your clients are previous clients. As an elopement photographer, every single client, for the most part, is going to be a new client. So you're always, it's kind of this revolving door of always looking for more clients. So it's not like 6 years down the road, you're set. Your business is just smooth sailing. You know exactly what to expect. You know how many clients you're going to have. That's how most businesses work. Usually the first few years are a ramp up period. And then after that, you have a little bit more predictability. You don't have that with elopements. So that is probably the biggest challenge, and the stress that comes along with that. Not enough people talk about it. Elopement photographers who, specifically educators, they want you to be excited and think eloping is just this, or elopement photography is just this incredible industry where you're going to have so much fun. You're going to have amazing clients. And that's all true, but that doesn't mean that there aren't challenges that go with it. So the predictability aspect, I think, needs to be talked about more. And it's something that if you are considering becoming an elopement photographer, you should consider that, and consider the stress that it will have on you down the road, because it's not going to get easier with time. There are things that will get easier, but the booking aspect of it, booking more clients, there's always going to be a level of uncertainty and stress that comes along with that. Then the last con that I'll talk about is the pressure that is on you to not just photograph a day, but to really develop and craft what the day actually is. So if you think about an engagement session, if a couple works with you on the couple's photos, anniversary photos, engagement photos, any sort of photography session, that experience, the photography session itself, the experience is on your shoulders to make sure that it's a fun, stress-free, relaxed environment for the photography session. For an elopement, that same pressure is amplified, because now it's not just a 1 hour and 90-minute session, but now it's a 5 or an 8 or a 10-hour elopement where you are responsible for making sure they're having an incredible day throughout the entire day. So as a wedding photographer, you have little bits of responsibility throughout the day. You have to make sure the portrait part of the day, the family photos part of the day, you have to make sure that those are enjoyable. But for the rest of the day, for the most part, you're just taking pictures, you're documenting. And so there's a lot less pressure to make sure that the day itself is incredible. It's just the photos, which is what you do. You're a photographer. That's the easy part, taking good pictures. But the, crafting a day that is enjoyable, that's meaningful, that's stress-free, and managing the expectations that go along with that is more challenging. There's more pressure, there's more stress. You have to make sure that you're very organized. In planning the elopement beforehand, you have to be proactive. You can't be responsive. You have to be proactive in planning and setting expectations and communication. And on the day of, you have to go above and beyond. You can't just take pictures. You have to be there to, you're the friend who's celebrating with them. You are the day of coordinator who's making sure things flow smoothly. You are the errand boy who, if they forgot something, you're going to help make sure that they have everything they need, and that if they don't, you'll run and grab it for them real quick, because they don't have those other people, those significant people, the maid of honor or the best man who normally would run errands for them on their wedding day to alleviate stress. They don't have that. So you have to be that person for them. So there are these other aspects that make it so that elopements, there's more pressure on the elopement photographer. And so you have to make sure you're ready for that. You're prepared to not just take pictures, but to have the whole day be on your shoulders and be responsible for that experience. So all things considered, elopements are incredible, but there are also downsides. So you have to weigh all the pros and cons and say, is this really what I want to invest the next 5-10 years in? Because there are two sides to every coin. And I think people, when it comes to elopements, people only talk about the one side. So I just wanted to make this video to share a little bit more in a transparent way. So any aspiring elopement photographers can kind of get into the industry with their eyes wide open instead of wondering or instead of fantasizing the industry. They can be a little bit more realistic about it. So if you have any questions about elopements, about elopement photography, go ahead and drop them in the comments. I will try to either reply in the comments or make another video to talk about something specific in more depth. So I'm really excited to make more of these videos in the future. So let me know if you have any questions. Make sure you subscribe if you're not already, and we will see you in the next one.